In a moment, what this morning's Russian papers are saying about Russia's petrol shortage and rising utility tariffs. First, to Ukraine. And no sign at all that Russia is about to end its war. Look at the kind of language that's being used in some of the papers here. The front page of today's Komsomolskaya Pravda. If there'll be no Ukraine, Europe will never fight with us, says nationalist Zakhar Prilepin. This article in Moskovsky Komsomolets is about the weekend's massive Russian aerial attack on Ukraine with more than 600 attack drones and 60 missiles. The paper quotes a military analyst as saying Russia has the means to send Ukraine back to the end of the 19th century by depriving it of energy and industrial production. This is a war of attrition. Whoever runs out of resources first will lose. So we must be aware of this and develop ties with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS countries so that our economic potential does not dry up but allows us to conduct hostilities in Ukraine for at least 2 or even 3 years. The same paper writes of the slow death of the spirit of Alaska. The fact that the leaders of Russia and America had friendly talks eye to eye mid-August now doesn't seem real at all. Russian papers continue to report pressures on the Russian economy. The top story in Nezavisima Gazeta today is the petrol shortage. In some regions, there has been a shortage of petrol for several weeks now. The continuation of the fuel crisis after the government ban on petrol exports comes as a surprise not only to Russians, but also to those enemies who seek to destabilize the Russian economy. In previous years, Russian oil companies exported up to 15% of the petrol they produced. And you would think that the export ban would have created an excess of domestic supply. But 7 months after the export restriction, Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak admitted fuel shortages in the regions. The State Statistics Agency calculates that since the start of the year, retail petrol prices have increased twice as fast as inflation. Wholesale exchange prices are also rising sharply. Russian oil refineries are coming under regular attack from Ukrainian drones, many of them not for the first time. Official statistics on oil refining volumes in Russia are not published, but it's no longer possible to deny the signs of petrol shortages in the regions. Moskovsky Komsomolets. Why do we keep trying to create the illusion that everything is totally fine, talking to the public as if they're little kids? I'm talking about petrol, or about debris from Ukrainian drones that does not affect production at refineries. Only after Trump mentioned that Russians were queuing for petrol did the Russian national press start to admit these queues. Meanwhile, funding for Russian science is falling, as this cartoon suggests. It says you can see immediately who the scientist is. With each year that passes, the gap between Russia and those countries leading scientific technological development widens. Judge for yourself. Currently, in terms of spending on science in US dollars by purchasing power parity of national currencies, Russia is 17 times behind the US, 15 times behind China, and 4 times behind Japan. Komsomolets also reports that in 2026 in Russia, utility tariffs will increase by almost 10%. For electricity tariffs, the figure will be 11.3%. Meanwhile, the cooling of the Russian economy is causing problems. The caption, how much does the bait cost? These are difficult times, you know. They aren't easy. According to the State Statistics Agency, Russia's GDP growth slowed from 4.5% in annual terms in the fourth quarter of 2024 to 1.4% in the first quarter of 2025, and in the second to only 1.1%. In January to March, the volume of wholesale trade decreased by 4% year-on-year. Water supply indicators fell by 2%. Mining, which forms about 15% of Russia's GDP, decreased by 1%. In the first half of the year, freight turnover decreased by 0.3% year-on-year. In particular, freight transportation by rail fell by 6.6%, and the indicator for seaports decreased by 5.4%. All of this was a direct consequence of the decline in the mining and manufacturing industries, which are most important for Russia.